Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be and whatever you may be up to right now on this rotating sphere in space. Welcome to this edition of AAU TZM Podcasts. My name is Adamantium, and hope everyone out there in the world is feeling well. And as I mentioned at the end of my last podcast, this time I will be here with you for the next hour, answering more of your questions. Also, the usual announcement, for those of you listening to this on YouTube right now, my podcasts also exist on TalkShoe.com. If you look below in the video description, you will see a direct link to my TalkShoe page there. And there at that page you'll be able to download and listen to the full 60-minute podcast, for free in MP3 format. So just in case if you wanted to listen to my stuff that way and not have to, go to 4 different 15-minute videos like you have to do on YouTube. But anyway, first off, before I get stuck into your questions, I feel it would be prudent to speak for a bit on the topic of the Occupy movement. I mentioned it very briefly at the beginning of my last podcast. However, since then, it has grown way beyond any of our expectations and has shown a wonderful insight into exactly where our frustrations lie and where they're directed at. My thoughts go out to all the occupiers. I still support you 100%. I love you all, each and every one of you. You are true friends and truly awakened human beings, okay? And especially to the Brighton guys and the Worthing guys, I will see you as soon as I possibly can. But anyway, first, for those of you who are unaware or maybe have been living under a rock, or as we commonly know it, the mainstream society, I'll give you a brief history of the Occupy movement. It started on September 17th of this year. The Canadian activist group Adbusters arranged an occupation of New York City's financial district, commonly known as Wall Street, through being inspired by the actions of the Egyptian, Spanish and Arab protests. And they basically decided to occupy Wall Street and hence the name, Occupy Wall Street. Even though the mainstream media coverage of this occupation was pretty much non-existent, word did get out over the internet of Adbusters, and more people decided to join them. The general theme of the occupation was then what it still is now, which is an outward expression of mass discontent of the current state of affairs and the mass consensus that something is seriously wrong with the current system and something has to change. Now, as far as I can perceive the Occupy movement, there's a twofold intention, initially. First off, to create an open forum for occupiers and members of the public to come and air their concerns with the current system, also to pose their ideas for potential solutions, come to a mass consensus about what the current system is, what the problems are with the current system, certain things, how to make this world a better place, and also come to a mass consensus on what sort of demands can be made as a result of that. And also the second intention, simply to create wonderful, compassionate and eventually self-sustaining communities where people feel comfortable to come to and feel welcoming. But on with the history. On October 15th, the decision was then made to not only expand upon the message of Occupy Wall Street with the beginning of the formation of some demands, but also to establish similar occupations in as many places as possible. As such, occupations have sprung up in nearly every corner of the world, and at the time of this recording, being 5th of November 2011, there are now, I think, 2,464 occupations in financial districts and other places around the world. So yeah, it's not some fringe thing that's easy to ignore. Okay, they're popping up everywhere. You know, the mainstream media have, as you can expect, been dismissive, patronising, and generally insulting towards the movement. However, this smear campaign, for one thing, it shouldn't be a surprise, but it can't last forever, and they know that we're growing. Okay? The alternative media, on the other hand, have been wonderful with their coverage. I would certainly now recommend outlets such as RT News. I mean, not just because they've allowed Peter Joseph to speak on air on 3 occasions, but they're also the host to the Kaiser Report, a fantastic financial current events show hosted by Max Kaiser. But overall, they're not scared to air the truth. The mainstream is just trying their absolute best to make this appear as small, misguided, and as futile as possible. 3 things that the Occupy movement, especially when combined with the Zeitgeist movement, are most certainly anything but. Now, taking this to sort of introducing a personal history here, on Sunday 16th of October, I was actually walking through Worthing Town Centre to find a good place to do some megaphone activism. And I happened to notice that we even have our own quote-unquote occupation here in Worthing, a relatively sleepy town. As such, this is how I met my friend Sarah, who basically began this occupation, and she was posted outside the HSBC bank with signs that she'd made herself. Now, I had immediately decided to join forces, as it were, with her, and it has given me an enriched sense of optimism and motivation to speak publicly on a megaphone. If you want to find out what sort of stuff I talk about in this regard, there's a video on my YouTube channel. I think it's called something along the lines of megaphone session at Occupy Worthing, or something to that effect. In the last week, myself, Sarah, and a few others have travelled from Worthing to Brighton and assisted with the establishing and operation of the Brighton occupation in Victoria Gardens, which started on the 29th of October this year. There are already pictures and videos up on YouTube and so forth, where you can watch the footage of our general assemblies. I know the footage from the first general assembly is up, so you can watch that. One thing you'll find is that I actually appear on the thumbnail for the video. But yeah, you can look that sort of stuff up to gain an understanding of what we're doing there. But overall, as you can imagine, the Occupy movement, which it is now known, we as the Zeitgeist movement completely and wholeheartedly support. And as such, we're doing everything we can to engage Occupy and place our hat in the ring, so to speak. I mean, Peter Joseph has spoken at the LA occupation, in addition to making a press release video entitled, I think it's Peter Joseph, Message to Occupy Wall Street and the World, and also many other TZM advocates have given similar talks to get this message out there. I, for one, am extremely excited about this because, for one thing, this is the first time in human history that there's ever been a global protest movement comprised not just of activists but everyday people who are targeting their angst at the very root causality of the world's problems, the financial system itself. That very fact in itself is a wonderful testament to how awake the world is and how determined we are to actually push for a better world. Now, while still in the spirit of the radical change of society, taking into consideration what the date of this upload is, being the 5th of November, it would be foolish of me to overlook the historical and also cultural significance of this date. And as such, I'll tell you what, I feel inclined to read a speech from the film V for Vendetta. That's a film that should be familiar for anyone in either the Zeitgeist movement, the Occupation movement, or especially Anonymous, since they wear the mask. But I'll tell you. But before I proceed, I should make a disclaimer. Okay, I don't personally, neither does the Zeitgeist movement, advocate the use of violence or destruction as a means to achieve any of our goals. So some of the content of this speech that I'm about to recite should be taken in the proper context and thus not be taken as me advocating the use of violence or destruction. I'm merely reading this from the standpoint that we all need to take responsibility for how we have collectively allowed the state of affairs to descend as far as it has. Okay, the speech in particular goes as follows. Good evening, London. Allow me to first apologise for this interruption. I do, like many of you, appreciate the comforts of the everyday routine, the security of the familiar, the tranquillity of repetition. I enjoy them as much as any bloke. But in the spirit of commemoration, whereby those important events of the past, usually associated with someone's death or the end of some awful bloody struggle, are celebrated with a nice holiday, I thought we could remark this November the 5th, a day that is sadly no longer remembered, by taking some time out of our daily lives to sit down and have a little chat. There are, of course, some who do not want us to speak. I suspect even now orders are being shouted into telephones and men with guns will soon be on their way. Why? Because while the truncheon may be used in lieu of conversation, words will always retain their power. Words offer the means to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth is, there is something terribly wrong with this country, isn't there? Cruelty and injustice, intolerance and oppression. And where once you had the freedom to object, to think and speak as you saw fit, you now have censors and systems of surveillance coercing your conformity and soliciting your submission. How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those who are more responsible than others, and they will be held accountable. But again, truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror. I know why you did it. I know you were afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, disease. There are a myriad of problems which conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense. Fear got the best of you, and in your panic you turned to the now High Chancellor Adam Sutler.